evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to St. Sepulchre's Church Hall. Tonight is a night of music and drama to raise money towards our restoration fund, and in particular the rewiring and the modernising of the church power supply. This task is very dear to our hearts due to the recent accident to our caretaker, Mr. Hornbeam, who, whilst doing the lights for our recent production of Blythe's Streuth, was unfortunately electrocuted. However, you'll be pleased to know that he has fully recovered his sight and that there is every hope that he will walk again. Now, as you see from the barometer on my left, the Restoration Fund has raised a splendid sum of £450.
Get on with it, Vicar.
And we hope to add substantially to this amount with your help and cooperation. And as I believe they show on Broadway, on with the show. Thank you.
Body? Now, will you be good enough to identify the deceased, please?
My brother. Actually, Harry.
Poor dear Henry! I just can't believe it!
Really, Inspector, perhaps obligation made.
Afraid not, sir. Perhaps you'd be good enough to tell me where you all were when the murder was committed.
Well, Inspector, I was in the dining room, finishing off with a piece of cumberware when I heard the scream, a terrible scream followed by others. I rushed out into the hall and had to nurse the grandfather's clock said 5 to 9.
Oh no, Oliver!
No, Mater, that can't be right. I was in the library reading Buckle's History of Civilization when I heard a scream. Automatically looked at my wrist watch and realized that the time was 7:35.
There seems to be a discrepancy here. This is most suspicious. I wonder what the explanation could be.
Seems pretty obvious to me, Inspector. By Jove, by Jove.
Ah, does it, sir?
Yes. I would surmise that his wristwatch and his grandfather's clock were both wrong.
I believe, sir, you have hit upon the solution, sir. And what were you doing while all this was going on?
Who, me?
Yes, sir, you.
I was taking a breath of fresh in the garden, Inspector.
I see, and did you see the scream?
No, Inspector, I can't say he did. Though he did see something deucedly funny.
Oh, and what was that?
I figure, Inspector, at the drawing room, wearing evening dress.
Was it the deceased, sir?
No, Inspector, don't think it was. It was a broad-shouldered chappie with a big black beard.
Was it either these two gentlemen over here?
It's so damn difficult to tell. The moment I caught sight of him, the damn light went off.
Aha! That must imply someone else was in the room at the time!
By Jove, Inspector, you're right. By Jove.
Look, Inspector, with all I said, they were now here, near the scene of the crime at the time.
Was anyone else present in the house?
Only the cook and James Butler.
I ring for them, Inspector.
Can you think of any reason why anyone should want to kill your brother, Mr. Darcy?
So far as I know, my brother had no enemies in our world, apart from our stepbrother Rupert, who disappeared on an expedition to Patagonia 10 years ago.
Rupert, you say?
Yes, Inspector, Rupert! No, I don't want you to worry. The Inspector wants to ask you a few questions.
Thank you, Mr. Darcy. Ah, James, I believe that you discovered the body.
That's right. I was on my way to the drawing room to make up the foyer when I heard this here scream. I ran in here. The room was in blackness. Moonlight was shining through the French windows. Suddenly, A man ran through the door and disappeared into the garden. When I switched on the light, I saw Mr. Darcy lying there, dead.
You obviously disturbed the murderer before he found what he was looking for.
With my limited knowledge of criminology, sir, I think you could say that.
What would you suppose was he looking for, Inspector?
I don't know yet, Mr. Darcy. What happened next?
Everyone came rushing in. I told Miss Oliver to ring the police.
I see. Everyone, as you see here by the door, there is a light switch. The murderer must have came through the door, turned off the lights like this. Like this! Murdered Henry and made his escape back through the door. Let's get the corpse out of the way.
But surely, Inspector, you don't suspect any of us.
At this stage, madam, I have to inspect everyone.
I don't know where we are.
I don't know where we are.
Good evening.
Good evening, can I ask you to call?
But what happened to the Reverend Courage?
What?
Reverend Courage of St. Stephen's. He's our vicar.
Oh, he's sick. I'm his replacement.
May I ask you what you were doing here, Vicar?
I was collecting for our sale of work.
And may I ask you whether you have ever been to this house before?
No, never, I'm ashamed to say.
Are you sure of that?
Yes, absolutely positive, Inspector.
Then how do you explain this? Hello? No. What a surprise. We are actually expecting a doorbell to ring. It's not a phone call. Doorbell. Thank you.
Answer the doorbell, James.
That must be the ambulance.
Open the door, James.
Right, definitely.
Well, if you will excuse me, Inspector, I really must get on with my round.
Just a moment, sir. Not so fast.
Yes, Inspector.
The inspector's onto something.
Be quiet, Hubert.
I have nothing to hide, Inspector.
Then how do you explain this? If you have never been to this house before, how did you manage to come through that door, which has a lock of intricate design known to only immediate members of the household?
All right, Inspector, you win.
Rupert!
Yes, Rupert, haha. And now I have the document I came for. I wish you all good night.
Just a moment, sir, not so fast.
Yes, Inspector.
The inspector's onto something.
Be quiet, Hubert.
I have nothing to hide, Inspector.
Then how do you explain this? If you have never been to this house before, how did you manage to come through that door which has a lock of intricate design known to only immediate members of the household?
All right, Inspector, you win.
Rupert!
Yes, Rupert, haha. Now I have the document I came for. I wish you all good night.
Just a moment, sir, not so fast.
Yes, Inspector.
The inspector's onto something.
Be quiet, Hubert.
I have nothing to hide, Inspector.
Then how do you explain this? If you have never been to this house before, how did you manage to come through that door which has a lock of intricate design known to only immediate members of the household?
All right, Inspector. You win.
Rupert!
Yes, Rupert. Ah, now I have the document I came for. I wish you all
Just a
good
moment,
night.
sir, not so fast.
Yes, Inspector.
The inspector's onto something.
Be quiet, Hubert.
I have nothing to hide, Inspector.
Then how do you explain this? If you have never been to this house before, how did you manage to come through that door which has a lock of intricate design known to only immediate